Welcome to everyone from all parts of Canada to our Liverways Sicily presentation today. Just a couple of words. I just thought I'd pop in a photo here. This was our Liverways group in Cyprus. Earlier this year, we were there in March. We had a marvelous time. We got off to a bit of a chilly start, but this is what was on one of our impromptu outings, and that's one of the things that makes our Liverways programs a little bit different, a little bit more exciting and adventurous, is because we just do things spontaneously. And that's if you see the testimonials that we've gotten from some of our members who participated in our last couple of trips, they all noted that they really appreciated the fact that, it's not like a regular tour program in that, you have a schedule every day. I mean, of course, we have excursions and activities that we do on a regular basis throughout, but there's also time to just do spontaneous stuff like we had in that last photo. And in doing so, invariably, you develop a bit of a connection to your fellow travelers, and that's what Wheel and Anchor is all about, is bringing travelers together who have a bit of a like-minded view of the world and how they like to travel and how they like to take time and enjoy and suck up the culture and all of the aspects of it. And that's our mission at Wheel and Anchor. And so far, I think we're succeeding on that because we've been having a great time so far since we've been starting traveling earlier this year. The team joining me today, my name is Gordon. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I'm joined by Paula Zarnik, who many of you will have spoken to. She is our senior trip specialist and is the one that gets to deal with all you front and center whenever you have questions or whenever you are interested in joining us on a trip. And of course, Joel, my co-founder, who creates these wonderful presentations that I get to deliver every week. Today, it's all about taking you on a journey through this wonderful island in the Mediterranean Sea. It's part of a series of programs that I'll touch on in a moment. And I'm going to be your virtual guide today as we look at Sicily, where we're headed in March of next year. Just a couple of words to the idea behind Liverways. A few key points here. First of all, it's a long stay. In other words, we typically stay 1 month. It could be 2 times 2 weeks. In a place like Sicily, for example, where it's such a big island, we couldn't cover the whole thing from just one location, or at least not without a lot of driving. Or like in Cyprus as well, we do 2 centers. But in any event, it's all about a longer period of time. That enables us to really settle in and not be on the clock all the time. We also travel in smaller groups. So the group that goes over on a Liverway might be a bigger group. It might be 20 or 30 or 40 people, but the sightseeing that we do, we break it into smaller groups of typically around 8 to 10 to 12 people. And that enables you to get a much more intimate experience in the destination. And again, also, as I mentioned before, we foster these sort of impromptu get-togethers. We did some musical and some entertainment evenings that weren't planned. We found out about them when we were there. We organized a bunch of people. We had a great time. So it's like a hybrid between traveling independently and traveling with a group. And we think it's the perfect hybrid. And so that's why we're introducing more and more of these Liverway programs. Another interesting thing is the idea is that what we're working towards is more of the ability to combine 2 destinations. So that's going to be new for this year. And so looking at Sicily, you could either, for example, go to Madeira for a month or 2 weeks and then come to Sicily, or you could go to, this is Madeira here, and on the right-hand side is the picture of Sicily, or you could go to Malta, which immediately precedes this program in Sicily for 2 weeks program, and then come to the first part of Sicily. You could then continue on to the next part of Sicily. You could also do this program and continue on to Cyprus, which is going to happen immediately after. So there's various combinations you could do. I think that any of these places you could spend a whole month in, and some of them like Madeira, it seemed like the month just flew by because we had so many things to do and so much fun there. But for some people, it's like 2 weeks is enough. So this way you can sort of string them together depending on the timing of them. And not only here, but also on our Liverways that we're doing in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, in Koh Samui, and in Bali, as well as New Zealand. Those ones you can also string together. So It's a nice way to travel. I've just returned to Europe, been through all the headaches of air travel now. It's going to take a while for the industry to get sorted out. So if you're going to travel overseas, why not stay a little bit longer? So anyway, that gives you just a little bit of a sense of what it's all about. Why did we choose Sicily? Well, we've had so far very successful programs in Madeira, in Cyprus, in Tuscany. We're repeating all of those ones next year, and we're looking for places that we can go in the latter part of winter when the weather at home is still kind of crap, and the weather here is much, much milder. So this part of the central part of the Mediterranean, it's not summer yet. It's certainly not 30 degrees, but it's also shoulder season. So there's a fraction of the people that you'll find in some of these destinations in the summertime when it's really overrun with tourism. They're just sort of starting off their season. So you get to enjoy these beautiful towns with a fraction of the people. You have lovely weather, and Sicily itself, well, it's so full of history and culture and food, and Mount Etna. I mean, there's so many things to do in Sicily. And so we've divided it, as I say, into 2 weeks, one on the East Coast, that's what we're going to talk about today, and one on the North Coast that I will be presenting in a couple of weeks' time. So let me give you a little bit of an overview of our program. Our destination for the first 2 weeks of our Sicily program is a city called Syracuse, which again is on the East Coast. If you look at the inset map, down at the bottom, you can see how Sicily is kind of shaped. It's the boot of Italy, but it's shaped a little bit like a triangle, and we're on that right hand, that east coast. And Syracuse is about a 45-minute drive south of Catania, which is the major city and one of two where there is an airport on Sicily. So if you were coming in just to this part of the program, you'd fly into Catania. If you are joining us, for example, from Malta, which I know there's a number of members that are waiting for this because they've already signed up for Malta and they are anxious to come along on this program, then we're going to take the ferry from Valletta to a port town that's about 30 minutes drive away. And we're going to be staying in Ortigia, which is it's really an island off of Syracuse that's full of history and these buildings that are, how can I describe it? If you've been to Florence, if you've been to some of the cities more in the northern part of Italy, they're immaculately restored. And here, they're sort of on the way to being restored, but they still have this charm about them, narrow alleyways, cafes in the streets. It's an absolutely magical place. You'll see it in the pictures as we go through the presentation. From this point here, there's a bunch of interesting things in the area that we can visit, including Mount Etna itself, which is, of course, the volcano that you see at the top of the map. It's about an hour drive away from Syracuse. The medieval city of Noto. We can visit nature reserves. They have like a Grand Canyon not far away from Noto. The nature reserve at Mendicari. We're going to go sailing on the Mediterranean. There's a whole bunch of things in the immediate area that will keep us more than busy. So here's a shot of the peninsula fortress that forms the end of Ortigia. You've probably never heard of it before. It's not a place that a lot of Canadians come and frequent. It's part of the reason why I think it's interesting and exciting to come here. But it is gradually more and more becoming on the tourist map. So we want to get in there before sort of the masses arrive. As I say, this is a town that is full of narrow, winding streets. I guarantee you, the first couple of days, you will get completely lost. But because it's an island and it's actually barely a kilometer from one side to the other, you can't get that far lost. And that's, again, part of the charm of it is that you find all these little trattorias and little enotecas, like wine bars, on all the different streets, not to mention cool little shops. I got this fantastic leather bag down there. But anyway, enough about that. We are staying at a residence hotel called Alla Geoteca, which is right in the heart of all of this. And you can see here, you get a flavor of what it's like. It's like old world Italy. It's got an atrium in the middle of it. And so the whole vibe of it is quite charming and old, but it's quite a well-restored hotel. In this, the hotel itself has a spa on it. I think they call it a Japanese spa. And the rooms are all equipped with a kitchenette. They're quite generously sized. So you've got, you know, a nice big bed, a little living area, and a kitchenette. That's kind of the theme that we are going for in a lot of our Liveaway programs, wherever we can find places like this. Breakfast will be right on site. And from here, as I say, you're basically right in the heart of this peninsula, this village, if you will, called Ortigia. Here's a shot at the Duomo, the cathedral in the town. So let's talk a little bit about what you might do on an average day there. I'll give you an overview of some of the excursions and activities. We've got a bunch of them laid out already, but probably more still to come as we determine how many people actually come with us on the trip. You know, we're constantly looking for new ideas and new people to work with and new experiences, frankly, right up until the trip leaves. And that's kind of the exciting part about it. On an average day here, if you're not joining us on one of the excursions, you'll probably go for a walk along the seafront. You can see this sidewalk, this pathway, which runs basically right around the island. There's little restaurants and cafes. You look out at the Mediterranean. If the weather's nice, you can actually even go into the sea. It's a little bit cool in March still. So for most, it's probably not quite bathing weather yet. But nevertheless, it's just, there's lots of little nooks and crannies where you can hang out and just, you know, read a book and relax if you're not off on one of our adventures. And as I say, there's some very interesting artisans and shops and crafts and just neat little places to hang out. The greater city of Syracuse has also some Roman ruins. There's a massive Colosseum. You'll see a picture of it in a second that we're going to be visiting on one of our tours of Syracuse and Ortigia. So you can venture also out into the wider area. There's a train station in Syracuse just off the island of Ortigia, so you're able to get around as well on your own. They also have boats for rent and for charter, so you can go out into, there's a little harbor area. So there's really plenty to do, and that's what I like. I find it's the right size town that 2 weeks is a great amount of time to spend here. Talking about some of the day excursions that we're going to do, I'm just going to give you a brief overview in the brochure. We're going to describe them in more detail. And then, of course, we have a supplement which gives the details of all the excursions and the price and so on. So, and that we update, as I say, as we develop more and more ideas and get more people excited about. So Sicily, and in particular Syracuse, was on the crossroads of sort of the Roman trails, and that's why you see this massive Colosseum here. The whole region around Syracuse, I mean, basically the whole island of Sicily, frankly, is rife with both Greek and Roman ruins, because of course the Greeks came through this area back in the early part of the 12th, 11th century. So you have different cultures that have passed through and left behind the marks, like you see at this Colosseum that is just outside of Ortigia in the city of Syracuse. We're going to go on the Godfather tour. So the famous movie that we're all too familiar with, The Godfather, obviously parts of it were filmed in Sicily. So we're going to take in a few of these little towns that are up in the hills surrounding Syracuse, where you'll probably recognize some of the filming locations. So this is always kind of fun because you know, there's you know, when we think about Sicily, we often think about, you know, the mafia and the Godfather and all of those things that are associated with it. And, you know, there's still a portion of that is, you know, very much alive and well in Sicily. And we'll learn a little bit about that and how the impact that that's had on life and on the local economy. But there's also the Hollywood side of it. And that's what we'll see on the Godfather tour. You can't visit Sicily, or at least the east part of Sicily, without going to see Mount Etna. This is one of Europe's last remaining, well, last is, I shouldn't say last, you never know these days, but it's one of Europe's only active volcanoes. So Etna erupts relatively recently. In fact, the last time was only about 4 years ago. And as you drive up to Etna, the top of which is about, it's not all that high, it's just over 10,000 feet, close to 11,000 feet, about 3,300 meters at the top. But you see the lava flows that like literally have come down and just buried carried over sort of villages. And as I say, the last one wasn't all that long ago. So that is not meant to sort of scare you off either. I climbed up as high up as you can go, Mount Etna, as I say, just a few weeks back, and it's sort of smoking away, but it's in one of its calm phases. And of course, everybody hopes it'll stay that way for a while. But it is really amazing if you haven't stood on an active volcano before. The feeling of being up there, the smell of sulfur that's in the air that you get from the smoke that still billows out of the top of the volcano, and the view, because of course Etna is a standalone, so everything around you can see all the way down to Catania, Taormina, and into the hills up to the north. So we're probably going to do 2 different excursions to Etna. We'll do a more active one, a hiking one, where we'll go with a local guide who will take us to see some of the places where you know, the lava or the hot ashes immediately below the surface, and you see the smoke piling up. And of course, those areas you can only visit with the guide, but we'll also make sure that we have one where you can get all the way to the top between the cable car and some special volcano jeeps that take you up to a high point where you get to take in the view without having to do all the exercise of hiking. So for sure, as I say, one of a couple of trips we're going to offer up to Etna. We're going to go down to this town of Noto, which I popped by as well when I was over there. This is another beautiful medieval city, and the plan is to go there in the evening, because when they light up some of these ancient ruins, not to mention the more modern ones, you know, the cathedral that's only a few centuries old, and it is just such a magical place. So we're going to try to combine it with you know, one of our, you know, famed wheel and anchor, you know, I don't say gourmet, but extravagant meals. Who knows, maybe a concert at the theater if we time it right. But just a visit to Noto itself will be well worth it. Of course, being on the sea, we can't not go for a sailing experience. And this will give us a glimpse of the coastline looking from the sea. So, you know, we'll pass by, for example, Vendicari, so we'll see the green, the nature reserve, the preserved part of the island, but also Ortigia and Syracuse itself. And you can, of course, on a clear day, see Mount Etna in the background. So it's always nice when you're on the sea to do a little bit by boat, because it gives you a different perspective on everything. Catania is the largest city in this part of Sicily. As I say, it's the airport that one flies into if one's coming to this region, and quite a grand city itself. It sits immediately in the shadow of Mount Etna. So I was reading some of the travel guides about Catania after having been there, you know, and they talk about, oh, if you hear the alarms, you know, you have to flee immediately. But volcanoes never work like that. They're always more than enough advanced warning, so you don't have to be concerned. But it's interesting the vibe that you get by being in a city like this, whose, you know, existence has been, you know, threatened, if you will, by this volcano on the doorstep, and it's grown up into this very thriving city. And so they have a big, wide, you know, main street with shops all along it, and an amazing fish market. So it's a cool stop, a nice place, and with any luck, we'll try to take in. They have a fantastic theater there. We'll try to take in a production. So all of those details are obviously subject to scheduling, and they often don't know more than a month or so in advance. But it's all of what's on our radar screen and is fun. The most, probably the most famous sort of tourist spot, beach destination in Sicily is Taormina. This is about an hour and 15 minutes from Syracuse to the north. The actual town itself is set way up on a hill with commanding views. You can see right over to the mainland of Italy on one side, of course, Mount Etna, like you can see here in the background. And so Taormina is it's just a magical city. You walk through it, all the shops and delicatessens, and just the whole vibe of it is it's a wonderful place. In fact, we contemplated even having the Liverway here, but you know, I'm one of those people, and I think I have a pretty good sense of our members that, you know, we like to have charm, and we like to have the feel of being in a town that's large enough and has the vibe, but it isn't exactly the tourist mecca. So, you know, if I listen around and I hear all kinds of, foreign voices and, accents that, I think maybe too many tourists here. You go to Ortigia, which is equally as nice a city, but just a little bit further off the beaten track for the, for tourists from overseas. So we can go and spend a wonderful day in Taormina and take it all in, be very happy to be back in Ortigia at the end of the day. Sicily is as known for its wines as many other parts of Italy. Those of you that are, aficionados will have probably had Nero d'Avola before, which is sort of the red wine grape of Sicily. So we don't have to venture too far to find some wineries, and we'll go to 3 in particular where we'll get to meet the family, the vintner, sample some of the products, and see the terroir and the climate and so on that differentiates Sicily's wines from so many other. And another thing that's quite famous, not only in Sicily but different parts of Italy, of course, is truffles. And in the springtime, we're typically just entering into truffle season. So you can see how, where the truffles originate from. So of course, they're mushrooms or fungi. And so maybe we'll have a chance to even pick some, they get sniffed out by dogs and so on and so forth. But more importantly, how to cook with truffles, right? We all like sort of truffles, but because of the very high cost of them, you're not always too sure how, what's the best way to prepare them. So we'll have a chance. We'll have our hand at a truffle cooking class. And again, that's just a few examples of some of the excursions that we would do while we're there. We're working on a whole bunch. As I say, I spent some time there with my colleague a few weeks back, and I was just so excited because there were so many neat places to go and things to see. So I'll share with you a little bit of information about it. Of course, all the details are in our brochure. So this portion of our program, this part of our Liverway, part 1, we're calling it, of Sicily in Syracuse. We'll be staying at the Aeolian residence hotel that I mentioned before. So for the 2 weeks, it'll be coming in around $38.80 double, and the single supplement here, you'll notice, is quite modest. So this is quite a good one for our solo travelers because we have a special arrangement. They have a slightly smaller room size that's available for single travelers. So and of course, what does that all include? I won't go through all the details. The important thing here, though, is that you can see that there's an activity credit of $1,000 per person that applies to all the different things that you can do. So our experience has been that this is very well received, because some people like to come and really just hang out and relax and, do a couple of things, but not too much. And I know that we had some members that we issued refunds to for what they didn't spend on the activity credit. So if you don't spend it, we'll give it back to you. But others that want to do something every day, in which case you're going to spend more than the $1,000, but you get to choose the pace that you want to go at and sort of the budget that you want to spend and so on. And of course, all of the other things that are included in our programs, breakfast every day, lunches on most of the excursions, and obviously our hosts will be there for the whole time, and we bring you in from the airport or from the ferry terminal if you're coming from Malta. So all those other things are taken care of, and so it's just a matter of eating out. And eating out in Ortigia, you can eat out for €10 and have a lovely meal, a delicious Sicilian pizza or some pasta or something like that, or you can go to a fantastic Michelin star restaurant. So, and everything in between. That's the beauty of it here. As far as exclusions are concerned, as usual, the only key ones here are airfare and insurance that are important, and we are able to help you with both of those. With airfares, just to give you a sense, you're probably looking around $1,100–1,200 to get into Sicily and back, or into Malta returning from Sicily. Of course, there's still a lot of volatility with airfares, but then other nice thing about traveling in a little bit the shoulder season is that you don't have the pressure on air prices like you have in the high season. So now it's time to get your questions answered. But of course, usually I find a lot of the questions come up after the webinar. And so you're welcome to drop us a note, give us a call, and we'll get your questions answered. And I think a couple have come in already. And yeah, please answer, I don't know, put any questions that you have into the Q&A box so that we have them. And yeah, here we go. So Paula, do we have any questions? I see one from Paul. Actually, this was one I had written down that came in by email before, because they were wondering about how warm is it? Can I swim in the Mediterranean? And so I didn't see if Paul is on the webinar or not, but in any event, I'll address the question. The weather at this time of the year in sort of mid-March is typically in the high teens. It can even get to 20, 21 degrees. In the evening, it can drop down to sort of, 12, 13 degrees. So it's kind of a perfect time to go weather-wise. The sea is going to be a bit cool, quite honestly. It's probably around 14, 15 degrees in March. So for those that like a bit of a cooler dip, it is still swimmable, but I think for most of us, it's probably on the chilly side to be swimming in the Mediterranean. Paula, did you see any other questions come in?
We do. Margaret was asking to reconfirm the dates.
Okay, so the dates we're at the beginning of the webinar, which I have to go back to. Do you have them in front of them? In front of you there, Paula?
Just pulling them up myself because I don't have them memorized. Let me.
Yeah, I have to go back to the beginning. It's in March. There you go. If I go back to the beginning, and in any event, Margaret, we will email you the dates with the brochure if you didn't get a copy already. It's roughly around the 6th of March. I can't open it while I'm in the webinar.
I'm pulling it up, so I'll get
March
to that
6th
one.
to the 20th. See, Rita's got in front of it. Thank you, Rita. March 6th to the 20th. March 6th to the 20th is part 1. So this one here in Syracuse. And then part 2, which again, I haven't introduced yet, is going to be on the north coast of Sicily. That will be the following 2 weeks. So it'll be March 20th to April the 3rd. Okay, so that's when Sicily is happening. Good. And let's see, I think that's it for questions.
We had a question, sorry, coming here,
Gordon.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
With regards to the terrain for the excursions and just every day getting around. Can you address that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So, I mean, this is an old city, as are all of the cities pretty much in Sicily. And so the terrain throughout the town is cobblestone. Now, the nice thing is it's flat. So unlike some of our other destinations like Madeira, which is all hills pretty much, in Syracuse, everything is flat other than a few stairs here and there. So that's one big benefit. Some of the towns that we go to, like Noto is on a little bit of a hill, or Palazzo Acraide, or they have definitely some climbing up and down. We'll always put it in the description of our excursions on our detailed excursion agenda, so that you have a sense of how challenging it is. But even Mount Etna, you can go up to the top of the mountain, and there's a short walk from where the jeeps end to a viewpoint that's a couple of 100 meters, and you are walking on lava rock. So it's a little bit more uneven, but it's doable for most. So hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect. I think that was great.
Good. And I see a request for a brochure. So yes, we will send you, if you didn't already get a copy, we will send you a copy of our brand new Sicily Liveaway brochure together with the replay of this webinar that will be done roughly in the next 24 hours. And I'm sure there'll be other questions that pop up. We'd be delighted to have you along on this trip. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you're really going to learn a lot, and you're going to see a part of Sicily and a part of Italy that is so different than the other parts. And as I mentioned, I'll be launching in a couple of weeks. I'm keeping it a secret for now, our program in the north coast of Sicily that will follow that. And then right after that, we're going to be heading up to Amalfi. So we're going to have a further liveaway 2 weeks in Sorrento, which is just at the edge of the Amalfi coast in Campania, Italy. So you could theoretically do 2 weeks, 2 weeks on the east coast of Sicily, 2 weeks on the north coast, 2 weeks on the Amalfi, and then it'll continue on up to Tuscany from there. any combination will work. So as much as or as little as you'd like to do, it's all in the cards. And we'd love to get your feedback on it. So just a reminder, we're going to be having next week on our regular date. So today we had a bit of a different date because of my travel schedule, but we'll be back to Thursday, May the 26th. I'll be coming back to you with our Liverway. This is a repeat of our Cyprus program happening next year. And we're delighted to be going back, and I'll be sharing with you some of the feedback from our members who came with us in Cyprus. And Paula has put the information in the chat box. So if you haven't already signed up, you want to find out a little bit about Cyprus and the fun time that we had this year, you can join us on the 26th of May. Thank you for your time. I hope you'll join us. I always love to do these webinars. And even though I can't see your faces, I'm sure they're smiling because weather's getting warm. It's getting nice in Canada. Summer's coming. And that's always a good thing. So thank you for joining us. Thanks for your time. And look forward to connecting up with you all again very, very soon. Welcome. This is our Wheel and Anchor webinar about our Liverway program in Sicily, the second part of our two parts in Sicily. The first part that we introduced last month, or actually I think we introduced it already in May, was to Syracuse, to Ortigia on the east coast of Sicily. So Sicily is a little bit like a triangle. I'll show you on the map in a moment. This is the second part in Cefalu, which is on the north coast, happening in March and April of next year. And so I just want to say a couple of words about Wheel and Anchor. We are a community of like-minded travelers from all parts of Canada. Our philosophy, the mission when we started this enterprise, was that we bring travelers together from all parts of the country who, have a very like-minded, a very Canadian perspective on what travel means. And people appreciate the fact that we have a slower pace on our trips, that we take time to, try and meet the locals, try and understand the culture, try and ask the questions and sample things in a way that allows us to really understand better what this world is all about. And of course, have a great time along the way. So that's what we're all about here at Wheel and Anchor. And the goal inside of all of that, and here a wonderful shot. This was a group in Madeira this past February on one of our Liverways, is that you become well-traveled. And I know most of our members are already well-traveled. We've been to all parts of the world. But our vision of well-traveled is, again, by spending more time, we really get to understand and get to know a place. And our relationship is very different than, when you pop through on a whirlwind tour on a cruise or something like that. And so, we also forged some great friendships. And I know that people who've traveled with us are still in touch with other members, and look forward to their company on future trips. So that's our goal here at Wheel and Anchor. My name is Gordon Dreger. I am the founder of Wheel and Anchor, but I couldn't do all this stuff without my team. In the background, Joel Curry, who is our marketing person and does all of our technical support as well. And Paula, of course, that I know many of you have spoken to. There's Paula right underneath me on the screen down there, or maybe you're above, I don't even know. Paula is our senior trip specialist, and deals with all of your inquiries and bookings and so on and all the rest of it. And then, of course, we have a bigger team than that, but that's the ones who are most relevant today. And we are going to take you, as people who are interested in Sicily, this very unique part of Italy, the ball to Italy's boot, as it were. And I'm going to be taking you on a little digital tour around the north coast, specifically Cefalu, which is where we're headed next March. Our Liverway programs, the direction that we're headed in, is all about spending a prolonged period of time out of Canada during the sort of winter and early spring months when the weather back home kind of sucks. And I know that many people travel south of the border, given events of the last couple of years, people are looking for alternatives. Where else can I go? Where can I spend some time and get away from the ugly part of winter to someplace where the climate is nice and where I can also learn something, be enriched, and have fun along the way. And so we have established numerous liveaways that go from January already in Thailand, in Koh Samui, and then Bali, Indonesia, and then continuing on in February, March, April in Madeira, Cyprus, Malta, here to Sicily, the Amalfi Coast that we introduced. And you can, of course, combine many of these liveaways together. And that's what more and more people are deciding, oh, well, I think I'd like to do 2 weeks here, or a month here and 2 weeks thereafter. And so here is, and you'll find this now in our program itineraries, a list of all of the European liveaway options that begins, as I mentioned, in February, goes all the way through to the beginning of May. And so to the extent that 2 programs are run back to back, you could, for example, go to Cyprus for 2 weeks and then go here to Cefalù, or you could go here in Cefalù and continue on to the Amalfi Coast, or you could do Cyprus, the second part of Cyprus and the Amalfi Coast. So there's a whole bunch of combinations that are possible. Our minimum program stay for a liveaway is 4 weeks. But again, you can do that in 2 times 2 weeks or any combination beyond that. So that's how it all works. If you have detailed questions about that, of course, that's what Paul is here for. Of course, me as well, to answer any questions about how the combos work and how the travel arrangements and so on and so forth. But right now, let's focus on Cefalù, a beautiful shot here from the one of the vantage points along the coastline in Cefalù. This is such a beautiful town. Let me give you the quick geography lesson on it, because as I mentioned, Sicily is roughly shaped like a triangle. North coast along here that goes over to Palermo from the Strait of Messina, which is which separates Sicily from the mainland. The east coast, down on the southeast coast, Ortigia, Syracuse, where we're going to be spending the first couple of weeks of our liveaway in Sicily, and the north coast here. And they're really quite different. And when we look at the world map, we think of Sicily as it's a small island, but it's anything but small, which is the reason that we've divided this up into 2 parts, because there's so much ground to cover. And even, quite honestly, even these 2 parts, even though we cover a lot of ground, there's still so much more in Sicily that, you'd need to spend literally months there. But I think that we've picked 2 of the best spots. And so, as I say, the first 2 weeks that we introduced some time ago to Ortigia, which you access through Catania Airport, one of 3 airports in Sicily. And the second part, so you either, stay for the first part in Ortigia, and then come, for those that will continue on and join us, we'll travel overland a few hours to reach Cefalù. Or if you are coming just for this part, and then continuing on with us to the Aeolian Islands, which we'll talk about in a second, and then on to the Amalfi Coast, you would fly into Palermo, a town that you've probably heard of before, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So that's how the program works. And of course, all of this information is in the program itinerary that will be sent out to you, together with a copy of the replay of this webinar tomorrow. So looking at Cefalù, I want to just share with you a few of the things, a few images about what a stay there is all about. And what I love about this town is that it is, in the summertime, it's actually really busy. So I was actually there at the end of May, beginning of June. So just about 6 weeks ago. And it was a hustle bustle, because it's quite a popular beach town. It has a beautiful long sandy beach, a couple of them actually. But what I like about the town is that, similar to Ortigia or Syracuse, it has these narrow cobblestone streets that run up and down from the Norman Cathedral that we look at in this picture from behind, that is about 1,000 years old. And you really get the feel like you are in Sicily, like that character of a village, that grittiness that you have. It's not as sort of picture perfect as you have in a place like Florence, because people still hang their laundry from the balconies on the streets, and it's that authentic feel that I really love about Sicily, and particularly towns like Cefalù. And so we will do an orientation tour, as we do on all of our programs, so you know what's where and how to get around and what are the things to see while you spend the time there. But of course, history is an important part of spending time in Sicily, and specifically here, we will organize it with our local guide Esther to show you how this town has evolved. They say that it dates back to as old as 400 BC, but specifically since the building of that cathedral, the Norman cathedral that you see in the photo here 1,000 years ago, how all this town has evolved. And the crossroads that it played, Sicily with its location in the Mediterranean, and all the people that sort of passed through over the centuries, and it's quite a fascinating history. Where this picture is actually taken from, there's also a Norman castle on top of a cliff, and we'll see other pictures of it. You can see it in the background here, which is a great place to go for a walk. As long as you're not too afraid of heights, because you can actually stand at the edge of that cliff. I took some amazing pictures myself. I did one of my newsletters there when I was there back at the end of May. The walking is fantastic. And let's face it, it's what a lot of our members just love to do. Sure, we walk a lot at home, for exercise and fresh air, but here you just get a completely different perspective of the place. Weather permitting, we will definitely do a boat trip along the coastline, so you can admire the northern coast of Italy, which differs quite a bit from the eastern coast in that it's quite mountainous. So you've got these very forested mountains that are in behind, running all along the coast from Palermo all the way over to Milazzo and the Strait of Messina. With these sort of towns that look like you see here, Cefalù, that have this very distinct character to them. So we'll hopefully be able to do that by boat. Odds are pretty good at that time of the year that the weather should be quite nice. We will make a trip into, of course, Palermo itself. Here's an important point with our Liverways as well. So as you know, or as you may not know, if you're new to this kind of a program, we include in the trip an activity credit of $1,000 in this particular case for the 2 weeks. If you book early, you get a bonus $200 to get $1,200, which covers a whole bunch of the excursions that we include. But with Palermo, for example, we are going to go there by train because it's like literally just under an hour away by train. So it's super easy to get to. And obviously going with Esther and with us, we show you the highlights. We show you the largest opera house in Sicily. We show you where the food markets are, and we'll give you a wonderful glimpse of the city. We'll have a great lunch at a place that we picked out. We're known for having great restaurants where we enjoy our meals. But one day hardly doesn't really even do the city justice. So you may very well want to go back. And once you've done it once on an excursion with us, you just hop on the train, you go yourself, because when you've been there, you'll get comfortable. Palermo is, contrary to whatever image you may get conjured up in your mind about the past, and of course Sicily with its reputation as the haven for the mafia in Italy, it is completely different than that now. It is very safe, so you can walk around pretty much any time of day or night and explore this really fascinating city that as well sits on the shoreline and has some great geographical features or geological features like the mountain that you see in the background there. Not far outside of Palermo is another beautiful town, a Norman architecture town called Monreale. It too has a UNESCO listed cathedral, much like the one in Cefalù, which was both cathedrals were listed by UNESCO back about 10 years ago. And so it's a wonderful place in the hills outside of Palermo to really understand the Norman influence that played such a role for centuries from the early part of the 12th century when they first came to this area and, as I say, exercised some influence. So beyond, of course, the history, which is everywhere, we also have the wonderful nature and the vineyards. We're all probably familiar with Sicilian wine, the most popular grape being Nero Tavola. If you haven't had some, definitely worth a try. But there's so much diversity to the viticulture in Sicily as well. And one of the spots that we'll go is a wonderful abbey in a town called Castelbuono, which is in the Parco del Madoni, the Madoni National Park that is just outside of Cefalù. So we drive about 30 minutes up into the mountains, visit this beautiful village, go to an abbey where they produce their own wines and have also an excellent restaurant where we'll enjoy a wine tasting and sort of a gourmet lunch. And again, this is part of the experience that we like to do, is combining the wine, the culture, the history. It all is part and parcel to what these Liverways are all about. Of course, ceramics. If you haven't been to Sicily before, you will immediately be taken by their ceramics, particularly the pineapple looking things like you see in red and green here. That is an icon of Sicily. But all of the wonderful, colorful ceramics that are still today handmade in many cases, also factory made, but I mean, the best stuff is handmade. We will take a tour through one of the towns that is famous for its ceramic production. And you will undoubtedly want to take a souvenir with you, because it really is quite brilliant. And again, I love these parts of the world like this, where you get to, experience and actually take home some authentic handicrafts. I almost hate to use the word handicrafts, because these days at half the time it means made in China, but certainly not here in the ceramic producing region of Sicily. Again, a large part of the experience of our Liverways, and more, we're putting more and more focus on this based on our experience from this past year, is on walking and hiking and getting out into nature. And so Cefalù is right on the coastline. So just to the south is the Madonina National Park, which is a huge area of beautiful rolling hills and mountains and forests with lots of hikes and walks. So we will offer at least a couple of guided hikes and walks. But the beauty here again is that you can just walk right outside the door. You don't necessarily need to buy an excursion from us. Of course, when you go out for the first time, it's nice to have somebody that shows you a little bit the lay of the land and where things are. But we like to organize the type of thing that you can just come along or go off on your own, because, as I say, it's perfectly safe and everything is very, very accessible. So that's something else we'll do. We'll also take some excursions a little further afield to Agrigento, which is more on the southwestern part of Sicily, but a city that is very much worth visiting, because it's actually the oldest town in Sicily, dating back to some 2,600 years. And again, something interesting that if you weren't already aware of it, obviously the Greeks played a huge influence in the original sort of discovery and the population of Sicily in the centuries before Christ. And Agrigento is probably the greatest monument to that, because it has these incredible temples. But on top of that, it also has a beautiful coastline with this white Mara, it looks like limestone cliffs that just melt into the sea. So you have a combination of some very scenic coastline that looks very different than what you'll find in the north, as well as some incredible history with these temples. Another thing that we're doing differently here, another program that we're offering, is an opportunity to learn Italian. And I know, again, in talking to many members over the last, particularly over the last 6 months, and since we started Wheel and Anchor, is that people are looking for a way to further themselves, further their education. So I've been in touch with, in fact, I met with the owners of a very nice Italian language school. So for those that are interested in delving a little bit more into the culture, of course, the best way is by learning a language. And so we have a couple of different options. You can join a course, spend a couple hours a day, or on a more sporadic basis, go in and have courses with very small groups. So sort of anywhere between 3 and 6 people, and actually learn Italian. I think it would be kind of fun. I kind of like to do it myself. One of those languages I always wanted to learn, but never really got around to it. So what better time than on a Liverway? In addition to all those, there's other excursions that we can and will likely do, but we'll sort of determine that as we get closer to the date, because it also depends what's happening in and around town. We also plan stuff quite spontaneously based on events and so on that are going on in the destination that we're visiting. So let me tell you for a couple of minutes a little bit about the accommodations. We have 2 options here. Our primary property is a very modern looking building, so it doesn't look very Italian here, but it's a very comfortable hotel that I found right on the beach. So literally all of the rooms look out over the sea, which is always a bonus. And again, right across the street, you can be at the beach. And not that the weather is necessarily super beach friendly at the end of March, beginning of April. It may very well be. The sea will be cool. Some people will undoubtedly go for a swim, if I know some of our members. But again, the main thing is that it is here you get a view from the hotel looking out at not all the rooms look towards town. Some of them look the other way, which is a beautiful view, a little bit more natural view. And you get a sense of what the coastline is all about. There aren't hardly any sunbeds and so on out there. This is obviously a shot that's taken in the summertime, but the color of the water, the town does look like this at pretty much any time of the year. And so again, in keeping with our philosophy at Wheel and Anchor, this is a suite hotel, in fact, one of the only ones in town. And so you've got very comfortable rooms with a balcony, with a living area and a couch, as well as a kitchenette that comes fully equipped. So you're able to, cook a little meal or something like that. The experience of our guests on Liverways we ran this year was that we feed them too much when we're out on our excursions for lunch. So people are like, oh, I don't want to go out for dinner again. So a lot of our members just say, I just want to cook a little soup or just a little something light for dinner. And so it's handy to have those kitchen facilities. And the Astro Suite Hotel that we is our primary accommodation there is literally about a 7-minute walk from the old historic center of town. However, I have secured another property. This is owned by a couple that I met, lovely people. They have a small B&B called BM Suites, and this is right in the middle of town. So this is on the pedestrian street in the middle of the old town, which means you're about a 5-6 minute walk from the beach, roughly less than 10 minutes to the other hotel. So they're not far apart. That's on foot. And this one is, the advantage to this one is very modern inside, super comfortable beds. And the special feature that they have in this hotel is that they have these special ceilings that they're painted. So they light up like a starry sky at night. It's really phenomenal. I've never seen anything quite like it. Apparently they're the only one in Sicily that has that. So here we have oversized studio rooms. We have 2 that are a bit smaller, so ideal for solo travelers, and we have 2 that are a little bit larger. And then all of those apartments share a kitchen, a little outdoor patio area. So again, they're situated right in the center of town. So that's the advantage there. They are on the first floor, or the second floor, as we would call it. So there is a flight of stairs that one has to get to go up there. But otherwise, I think this is a wonderful choice as well, particularly if you have a couple of couples that want to share accommodation, because there's only 4 rooms in here. And so this is something a little bit special. So that covers off the Cefalù part. Again, the more details are available in the program itinerary that you will get shortly. But I want to take a couple of minutes and tell you about the extension. So this is something a little bit different that we're doing after this live away. We've created a gap between our Cefalù program and our Amalfi Coast program. So one can do this as a post tour or an in-between tour or a pre-trip to the Amalfi Coast. And this is a visit to the Aeolian Islands. And I should have stuck the map in here in case you didn't remember, but the Aeolian Islands is a group of volcanic islands that are situated just to the north of the north coast of Sicily. I visited there. I made an extra trip, as I say, just at the beginning of last month. And wow, this place is really quite remarkable. We will stay specifically on the island of Salina. So these are all volcanoes. One of them, the island of Stromboli, is still an active volcano. I actually climbed halfway up it and watched the fire and brimstone coming out of the top. Salina, where we will stay, is an idyllic paradise, which has 2 inactive volcanoes on it, that for those that are up to a good hike, it's not a difficult, but it is, does take a couple hours to climb up to the summit, and you have a beautiful view. If you don't like to hike, we will be planning some excursions around the island. We're just going to stay here for a few nights. We're going to visit some vineyards. The island is known for producing its own wine. We're going to visit some beautiful coastal spots like you see here in the picture. This is a picture I actually took myself when I was there. And we have a lovely hotel called the Signum, which is an excellent hotel with a very fine restaurant that we're going to be staying at for a couple of nights. So we will leave here, travel to Milazzo, which is on the north coast, about an hour and a bit from Cefalù, take the ferry over to Salina, spend a couple of nights here. And then for those that are continuing on or flying back for that matter, we'll take the overnight ferry from here directly to Naples. And then that is your point of either continuing on to the Amalfi Coast or flying back home from there, or continuing on your journey elsewhere in Italy. So this is a view from one part of the islands looking over to Stromboli in the background, which looks like a volcano and is in fact an active volcano. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful spot in Italy that not many people from Canada are aware of. Following this program, which I'm not going to go into that on this webinar, we released this program a couple of weeks ago, is our Amalfi Coast program, where we're going to be staying in Sorrento, which is sort of the gateway to the Amalfi Coast. And so if you are interested in that program, interested in perhaps combining Cefalù with Amalfi, then you can either look at the replay of the webinar or request a copy of our program itinerary, which we will be happy to send along. And you can combine those two programs and put the Aeolian Islands in between. And that would be an incredible Italian holiday, let me tell you. So I'll touch on a few small details. Of course, all of the information is in the program itinerary that we are going to send you tomorrow. So just to give you a sense of the program, so the prices in here, of course, in Canadian dollars as usual. This is for 2 weeks, breakfast every day, $1,000 of activity credit, the host, and you know, all the other things that we include in our program. So you get a sense of the pricing here, and that, as I say, includes all those things. The accommodation, the breakfast, the activity credit towards all the excursions, a SIM card for your stay, which helps to enable us to communicate as a group. People found that super useful because we set up a special chat group and are therefore able to facilitate things among members. Yeah, that's what's in the program. Of course, the only thing that is left over is your airfare, which we're happy to facilitate for you, as well as cancellation and travel medical insurance. Getting over there, regardless of which combination you're doing at the moment, if you're flying this summer, I would say something different, and you'll find out from about that in my my newsletter this weekend. But projecting towards next early spring, so when this trip is happening, prices still seem to be fairly normal. So this gives you an indication of what some of the price points are to fly over there. You would fly likely via a gateway like Rome or Frankfurt or Munich, for example, to get into Catania or Palermo, depending on whether you're going to join us for you know, which of the parts in Sicily. So again, we can provide some more information on that, and it is in the additional information that we send you together with the booking forms. If you sign up right away, and we already have a number of people that are interested in this program because they've already signed up for the first part, we will give you an additional $200 in activity credit for those that sign up before the end of August, assuming you take at least 2 Liverway segments. So now is the time to answer any questions that you might have about this program. Paula, I guess maybe a couple of questions have come in. If you don't think of any now, but you have some 10 minutes from now, obviously, please drop us an email or give us a ring. And so, Paula, any questions have come in?
Sure. So a standard question, members are asking, what would be the weather?
The weather, yes.
At this time of year.
Mention this from the get-go. So good question. So yeah, the weather, this would be similar to, you know, what the weather that we would have in late April, early May. So typically in Sicily in end of March, beginning of April, the temperature is usually between 16 and 20 degrees. Although lately they told me this year it was already even a bit warmer. Climate change is, I suppose, good if you're going to the Mediterranean, maybe not so good in other cases. But I would count on typically the temperatures during the day being between 16 and 20 degrees. In the nighttime, it definitely cools down, maybe a bit cooler than that, sort of 12 to 15 degrees would be sort of the average for this time of the year. They do get some rain in late March, early April, but not, it's, as you'll see when you go there, and even from the pictures, it's a relatively arid climate there. So they don't get tons of rain. So you may get the occasional passing shower, but the weather's quite lovely. And it's mild, but it's not hot. And so it's quiet because the real beach season sort of starts the beginning of June. And that's when, as I say, when I was there, it was already quite busy. So that's what's nice about enjoying it at this time of the year. It's pretty quiet. Anyway, long answer to a short question.
It's good. It's such a variable that is out of our control. So
yeah, absolutely. But it's going to be better weather than at home in Canada, I can tell you.
That's all that matters. Unless you like the winter. I have another question that's come in with all the various liveaways. And if someone is trying to decide between the two parts of Sicily in combination with maybe another destination, what would you say are the main differences between the two options in Sicily?
Between the two options in Sicily, what would I say are the differences? So Ortigia is a little bit bigger of a town. So it's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more touristic in the sense that there are more retail. There's more shopping. There's more there's more retail shops, more restaurants. It's a little bit more polished. Although when I say polished, I'm hesitant because in Sicily, nothing is polished. Everything in Sicily is a degree grittier and a degree, dirty is the wrong word, but it's more, it's
authentic?
less polished than what you'll find in Florence, in Tuscany, or in, even in Rome, where you go into the central parts and sort of everything is almost perfect. And here things are a little bit more, earthy and down to earth. And so between the two, Ortigia is the more polished. It's like Taormina is one of the excursions we do. That is the fanciest resort town in Syracuse, in Sicily. And, it looks very touristy, which is part of the reason why we didn't stay there. It's also, way more expensive, and it just doesn't really justify the cost. Cefalù, on the other hand, is a bit smaller than Syracuse. The scenery is, I think, prettier in Cefalù because you have the mountainous coastline, whereas Ortigia, the area around Syracuse, is relatively flat or low rolling hills, with the exception of Mount Etna, the volcano that's off in the distance. That what I would say are the major differences. So again, if you're looking for the more smaller town, at this time of the year, quieter, less touristic sort of experience, then I would say Cefalù, whereas Ortigia is a little bit busier. They're all quiet at this time of the year, which is why we go now when it's out of the main tourist season. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Yeah, no, those are always challenging when you're trying to consider and compare amongst all the good options.
And I think if you go to one, you'll say, oh, I should have gone to the other. But, I realize not everybody can go to both every year, but, maybe you'll say, well, I'm going to do this and this year, and maybe next year, you can always go back. Think about it that way. We're making our liveaway so people love the idea. And I know that most of the people that came with us this year are already, if they haven't already booked, they're planning to book one of these trips for next year because they had such a great time. So you don't have to do it all in one go.
But some are trying.
I understand that. Some people came for 2 months this year and will come 2 months next year, and that's fine too.
Yeah, definitely. We have another question that's come in here from Dan asking about the accommodation, if there is a separate bedroom and to the living and kitchen area.
Yes, the bedroom is a separate bedroom and living room. And I see that Dan asked as well, is if there are any 2-bedroom suites available. There aren't. They only have 1-bedroom suites in the Astro Suites. There is a couch bed, like a pull-out couch in the living room. So theoretically, you could put another person in there. They're comfortable. They're better than the ones we have at home. I don't necessarily recommend that. If you are thinking about a 2-bedroom type situation, then, you know, taking 2 of the suites and the BM suites might be the option. I mean, there'll be 2 other apartments there, but yeah, we do. Unfortunately, I wish all of the accommodations that we have everywhere are available everywhere, but they aren't. And I sort of scoured the town for what there was, and this was the best thing available. So that's what we have.
Perfect. Yeah. Especially for a longer stay, a pullout might not be the most ideal option, or
no, well, that's why
space.
I don't generally, you know, they say, oh, you know, you can put 4 people in here. I'm like, no, we don't do that. It's for 2 weeks for 2 people. It's great. It's super comfortable. It's all you need.
Yeah. Perfect. That's everything so far.
Okay, good. All right. Well,
sure
on that note, then please do let us know if you have any questions. Join us next week, where we are finally relaunching our Majestic Fjords of Norway trip that is going to happen in May of 2023. It's been a long road to get here, but we finally got here. So please do join us if you're interested at all. This trip is going to be available at a relatively special price because it's a long story as to how we got there. But the prices from 2024 and beyond are going to be considerably more expensive for various reasons. So if you've ever thought about going to the fjords of Norway, this is one of my favorite places. They're all my favorite places, but come have a look next week on July 14th. And let us know if you have any other questions. And Paula has put the link to next week's webinar in the chat box if you didn't see it. Thank you all for joining me today, and have yourselves a wonderful week. And I will look forward to catching up with you next week if you join our webinar next week. Happy travels, happy summer, and take care of yourselves.